Good afternoon. And welcome to all of you who are joining us on the internet as well. For those of you here as well as those of you on the internet, this is not a closed group, and you are welcome to and are invited to invite your friends who you think might be interested to participate. Just because we're into the book doesn't mean that no one new can start. Okay. Well, let's go right into the book.
Prayer is a way of asking for something. It is the medium of miracles, but the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness, because those who have been forgiven have everything. Once forgiveness has been accepted, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. The prayer for forgiveness is nothing more than a request that you may be able to recognize what you already have. In electing perception instead of knowledge, you place yourself in a position where you could resemble your Father only by perceiving miraculously.
Note the word resemble. You placed yourself in a position where you could resemble your Father. But the fact is that you're not here to resemble the Father. You're here to be the Father expressed. Continue.
You have lost the knowledge that you yourself are a miracle of God. Creation is your source and your only real function.
That pretty well summarizes everything we've been talking about in terms of turning toward the altar. Forgiving means to give something for something. And in turning to the altar, you're saying, I'm willing to give my predisposition to interpret things the way I want to interpret them for your view, Father, for truth as you are being it. Because at the bottom line, all of you in some way feel guilty. And mind you, that feeling of discomfort is like the bell on the garbage truck when it's in reverse, saying this is a more dangerous circumstance than when I'm moving forward. It would seem to you that punishment would naturally be forthcoming for your disobedience, if you will. And so it's comforting and practical to suggest to you that you need to ask for forgiveness. That sets your mind in the right direction. But because of the polarized nature of your attitude when you're separate, it's easy for you to imagine that the Father will say, no, I won't forgive you. You have been too disobedient, and you deserve to suffer a little before I extend my forgiveness. And so it's necessary to go a step further and understand that forgiveness is really embodied in your willingness to abandon your perceptions and your confidences in the way things work. in favor of having the Father's view, the Father's perspective revealed to you, which naturally brings you back into your divine function of being the presence of God expressing Himself right where you are and claiming no right to a private and personal authority. I've said before that prayer is saying yes to God, not asking God for something, which is another way of saying prayer is yielding to God. And once you've yielded to God, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. In the last sentence there, creation is your source and your only real function. You simply aren't here to have a perception of what that is, an evaluation of what that is, an opinion about what that is. You see, everything is so much simpler than the way you've been doing it. Let's continue.
May I ask a question on that paragraph?
Yes, you may.
It's on the last sentence where it says, creation is my function. I'm still a little hazy on what that would be like, since I'm perceiving and trying to be ingenious and intellectual all the time.
Well, it means none of that.
I realize that, so that therefore I don't even have a feel for what it's. And since it's my only function, I think I ought to look into it.
That recognition is the dawning of wisdom. Yes.
It's a start.
Yes. First of all, it's an experience of perfect peace. Perfect peace is you experiencing no self-consciousness, you experiencing no fear, you experiencing no vulnerability, you not caring whether others have judgments of you, on you. And in that space, if I may put it that way, you find yourself being completely undefended. In being completely undefended, there is no inclination to assert yourself in any way. And it's like floating on your back in a river, where no energy needs to be expended for survival or to achieve a goal. And when you find yourself floating in a river, you find nothing static about your life, because the current of the river is moving you and you are letting yourself be at one with it. In practical terms, that means that you will find yourself functioning, quote, in the world, unquote, busy, active, but not busy or active achieving personal goals, things you have made up to accomplish. And when that happens, you will find yourself, by virtue of having abandoned yourself to the movement of being, reflecting the Father's will, embodying the Father's will. And thus, everything you find yourself doing will have real meaning with a capital M, that, for lack of better words, will glorify God, quote, in the world, unquote, embodying His purpose and blessing everyone. That's the beginning of the experience. And that's the nature of the experience. That's the end of the answer.
So that doesn't sound like the common, ordinary, run-of-the-mill definition of creating. You know, like we think of somebody who's a creative artist, or gee, that person is really creative. Look what they did to their garden. But it sounds like what you're talking about is where you actually have no idea or ideas in your head that you claim to be, that come from thinking and planning. It's more like, oh, that's interesting. Look how that worked out. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen next. Well, I wonder how that's going to resolve itself. So it's kind of that internal dialogue as opposed to the ones that we're normally. Is that?
That's exactly correct. It's where everything that you do is inspired, not reasoned out. And as you say, it is only afterwards, when you look and see what has happened, that you will marvel at it. You will find yourself in the beginning saying often, man, I never would have thought of that. Or I would never have been that expansive. I would never have been that free in expressing what was expressed. And so you will find that creation has occurred, and it has not been separate from you in any way. But it will not have had anything to do with the thinker, the planner, the imaginer, the smartass, the one who was inventive. And it's when you let that happen and you see the perfection of what happens that you begin to realize how much energy you wasted, how much trepidation you experienced when you were trying to be ingenious yourself. And at the bottom line, you will experience the fact that there is a God and that nothing is up to you and nothing ever was up to you to do all by yourself. If you were to do this rather persistently, you might be surprised to find that it wasn't until well after the fact, it wasn't until some time, in quotes, had passed, that you realized that all of this happened in the absence of fear, that you were and had been experiencing utter peace. And then you will say, wow, what a difference from the way I used to do it and the way I used to feel. and the debilitating effect of the undercurrent of anxiety. Peace doesn't come up and hit you in the face. But when you discover that you have been being for 6 months without fear, then you understand experientially what peace is and how wonderful it is, and that it really is your birthright. And this realization helps to devalue any inclination you have to continue to operate independently as an authorizer in your own right. Being part of the movement of creation by not behaving in any way separate from it causes you and the Creator to be indistinguishable. And you find your very being to itself be the movement of creation. An experience in which is pure satisfaction, even though it is utterly obvious to you that you haven't had one little speck of an idea of your own being implemented. This is why what I'm talking about is so unsatisfying and unappealing to the ego. You all get quite a hit from having your back to the altar and imagining that everything is there for you to deal with on your own and to define and to manipulate and to protect yourself against. So there's no way I can appeal to your egos in order to help you or get you to wake up. Because that's the one thing you have to give for the Father's point of view. That's the one thing you have to give up in order to have a replacement of something meaningful. And there's the forgiveness. Okay.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes?
How does intuition fit into this scheme? Because a lot of people will say, well, you know, I have a feeling, but so often it's a projection. You know, it's like when I was in Hawaii, I kept running into people who wanted to start a healing center. You know, every new person, I'm going to start a healing center. And after a year of listening to people talk about, I began to recognize that what they were looking for was healing for themselves. And then they would project it out there into the world. So many people have intuition or think that they have intuition. And I can't help but feel that intuition in some, it's like, you know, you do recognize that there's a lack, you know what I mean, in your life. There's something missing. So how does intuition fit in the...
I would put it this way. Intuition is inspiration not looked into deeply enough. Real intuition is an experience of knowing something true. And that is different from projection. And the word is used carelessly. But intuition is like the leading edge of the experience of inspiration. And instead of acting quickly on intuition, one should abide with it and go deeper into it. Into it more deeply, to intuit it more deeply, so that the fullness of the inspiration can flow into manifestation or embodiment. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Raj,
Yes.
we have a question from the internet.
Yes.
Amina on the internet would like to know, is the process of creating art and music where there's no planning and where it is just emerges from that inspiration is a moment of God expressing?
Indeed. It is when it is when one tries to be creative to order that it stops being inspiration. If someone says, my living room is done in blues and greens, and I would like a painting that would harmonize with and complement the color scheme of my living room. That's when an artist ceases to be an artist, when he tries to be artistic to order, to fulfill a request. Because the movement of God considers nothing except the blossoming, forthcoming of love in utter originality. And nothing other than love is taken into consideration. I want to refine that a bit, because you can sit a monkey down at a piano and the monkey will behave without plans, and what will emerge will not be beautiful or harmonious. And so thoughtless action is not the same as doing something without a personal plan. Let me put it this way. Inspiration is a movement that is allowed by you, by any one of you. And when it is allowed, that movement finds expression in form. And that is different from thoughtless, unplanned action. So just letting go and behaving randomly and without concern and ultimately without love will not result in art or beauty or that which blesses everyone. So, because of the tendency of much metaphysical and New Age thought in this present day, I need to make that distinction so that no one thinks I'm saying that if you just behave without plans, you will be doing God's will. It's not true. The only way you will be doing God's will is when you have turned toward God, desiring to know the truth, desiring to experience the movement of love, so that your every breath, your every movement reflects that into expression. Okay. Continue.
The statement, God created man in his own image and likeness, needs reinterpretation. Image can be understood as thought, and likeness as of a like quality. God did create spirit in his own thought, and of a quality like to his own. There is nothing else.
I'm going to interrupt here. We spoke in the last few weeks about the fact that mind, God, moves. And the movement is a movement of ideas. And those ideas are perfectly recognizable to that which formed the ideas. And in their recognizability, they are visible and tangible, but not material. All of it is pure spirit. Continue.
Perception, on the other hand, is impossible without a belief in more and less. At every level, it involves selectivity. Perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. Evaluation is an essential part of perception because judgments are necessary in order to select.
Yes. In order to perceive, in order to accept or reject, organize and reorganize, there has to be something separate from the movement of creation to observe it, and therefore be in a position to analyze it. And so, of course, one must have turned one's back from the altar in order to create the imaginary environment in which one could be an independent observer and then proceed to evaluate. Part of what is very dissatisfying to the ego in the process of awakening is that in yielding to the river, floating on your back, expending no energy whatsoever for survival or the achievement of goals, one has abandoned the so-called right to make evaluations. You can't even say, well, I'd like to be closer to the edge of the river, or I'd like to be in a quieter part of the river, or I'd like to be in a faster part of the river. One has arrived at a point of saying, thy will be done. I will fit in. Those are the terrible words. I will fit in. I yield to the movement of creation and hold myself separate from it no longer. And in doing that, abandoning this apparent right to be separate, you find yourself at one with it, and it being the wholeness of you. Mind spake, and form appeared. That's a brief description of creation. Or mind speaks, and form appears. But understand that this form is not matter. Mind speaks and recognizes itself in that act or action. And it's all mental. It's all mind. And the substance of the experience is spirit, not matter. Now, what I want to bring home at this moment is that nothing that you are experiencing right now is matter. Not the chairs you're sitting on, not the bodies that are sitting on the chairs, not the trees, nothing that you are experiencing is matter. And therefore, nothing that you are experiencing right now is bound by what you would call the laws of matter or physics. Form follows function. Mind spake and form appeared. Mind spake and function functioned and was recognizable and identifiable. The movement of God, of creation, is